Oklahoma Sooners 6-0. What a game against Texas. What a bunch of storylines, starting with the quarterback position, of course, that we will discuss here. And we can only do this with our guy, Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mark. I just wish there was something to talk about this week.
Yeah, that's why we need comments, questions. Maybe we'll talk about like all-time best Oklahoma left tackles or something we'll do today. We're trying to come up with something. No, we are going to be here fielding all your comments and questions. And although I think we can guess what some of them will be. All right. Before we get to, people always want to know what's next and what's upcoming, but that game was too great to not give it its just due here. And I know you certainly did after the ball game. So reminder to everyone, join Jason right here at the Voice of College Football OU after each Sooners game. TCU's coming up this Saturday as Jason takes your comments and questions and gives his take on Oklahoma's latest performance. And the latest performance was really bad and then a whole lot of great that made up for it. And Kennedy Brooks to the end zone with 3 seconds left. Wow. 55-48.
Yeah, no, I think one of the strangest and probably best Red River shootouts there's ever been. I mean, I know it's hard to say that after the fourth overtime affair a year ago, but you kind of got the feel that this game was much better played on both sides of the ball, maybe than that one was last year. So I think, to your point, Oklahoma started the game about as bad as you possibly could have started the game. With the first play to Xavier Worthy, then the block punt, then you find yourself down 14-0 within a couple of minutes of the game. But the game turned. And this is one of those games, maybe more so than any game, momentum. It's hard to get that momentum back when you lose it. And then obviously Texas had it for a large majority of the first half, 14-0, and then they were up again 28-7. But Oklahoma, got that spark, and certainly we'll talk about that. But I think a couple of really good things outside of just the quarterback discussion in general. Oklahoma made a lot of good on the second half. They made a lot of good defensive adjustments, specifically on Bijan Robinson. I think he had a little bit over 100 yards in the first half, only had 130 some overall. So they played him much better. In the second half, open field tackling was a little bit better as well. And then to your point about Kennedy Brooks, 217 yards played. I mean, just a kid that you got to be happy for. Whether or not you're a Oklahoma fan or not, opted out last year and has really kind of struggled early on in the season. And he played extremely well. Offensive line played much better at times. You got to say that they played better when you run the ball for over 300 yards. I know that Texas struggles against the run, very similar to how Arkansas was able to beat beat Texas as well. But still being able to go and do that, running at a clip that you haven't been able to do so at all this year is certainly something that you can take away as a huge positive. And I think, for me, watching this team, specifically kind of in the first half, you look at a team that, yes, was 5-0, but they're just finding ways to win against teams that they shouldn't just be finding ways to win against. And I think, you kind of felt like, at least from my perspective, this team was probably closer to maybe 2 to 3 losses versus being undefeated at the end of the year. And I think the way, kind of the way this team played in the second half gives you hope. I think it gives you the thought that, hey, maybe this is a team that can go undefeated. We've talked a lot, Mark, about playing complementary football, and they did in the second half for the first time all year. And when they did, they outscored Texas 35-10. So it shows the potential that this team has if they can put it all together consistently throughout the last half of this year.
Oklahoma made that amazing comeback from 28-7. I think that was the score at the end of the first quarter. My thought at that point was that, of course, if somebody was going to ask me who's going to win this game, the probability is so far in front for any team that's leading by 3 touchdowns after the first quarter, that's the reasonable choice because of the score. But also, if they were good enough to take that kind of lead, maybe they're good enough to just keep it up. At the same time, I never felt like the game was over. Just knowing the history of these two teams on the same field, knowing the offensive weapons on both sides and also some defensive deficiencies, I still thought, I'm not letting this game go. I got to ride this for a little bit longer because it's 3 possessions. No, it's not a good position to be in, but it's 3 possessions. The other thing, to your point, is that there's a difference being in a 48-48 game with a couple minutes left. That's a while back and forth, but you're emotionally and mentally kind of prepared to be in that position because that's the way the entire game's been, versus the momentum swing of either we were kind of down and out. Maybe I had a temptation to check out because I thought all was lost and it just wasn't our day. And wow, doesn't this feel amazing to be in the game and we are clicking, versus I was kind of checked out emotionally and mentally. And I don't mean like the players decided we're checking out, but human nature taking over that we got this, we are on top of it. And when you're losing that, and you've been losing it for a couple quarters and everything's going against you, and you see this other team and the score is just going boom, 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 that mentally and emotionally having that lack of confidence and that fear that we're blowing this. That I've never been in that position, but I can understand what an athlete would feel like on either side of that. But I think most of us can relate a little bit more to the fear of we're blowing this, and we can't do anything to change it, and it just seems like everything's going against us. And can you imagine we're going to blow a 21-point lead?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I said, Mark, one of the things about this game that I've been in the stadium for this game 5 or 6 times, less than a lot. The momentum swings in this game are astronomical compared to other games. And I think one of the big things that was really important for Oklahoma, there towards the end of the third and fourth, they kept the ball was on the Oklahoma fans side of the field. So they were a huge factor. So yeah, I think from that, I think one of the things that was prevalent early is that Oklahoma really just didn't have any momentum. They weren't able to get anything done offensively consistently in that game. And then, I mean, they didn't cover Xavier Worthy the entire game. So, I mean, and that was really kind of accentuated very much early on. And they didn't cover very well on the back end, and they would get a couple of things going, and then they would get a couple of turnovers on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, when that momentum starts flipping one side or the other, in this game, it's really hard to get it back. I mean, a lot of people that I have talked to, media, and just people that were there, said this is the loudest that they'd ever seen an Oklahoma side of the stadium. They said you can make the argument that the 45,000 fans for Oklahoma fans made more noise than they do in typical home games. So I mean, I think part of it has to do with the rivalry, obviously. But yeah, at the same time, they did a lot of, like I said, one of the things that has been a really big issue, I think, for Oklahoma defensively over the last 10 years or so is that Mike Stoops did not do a good job of making a lot of halftime adjustments. Give Alex Grinch credit; he did. He has done that, through. So they still didn't cover great in the back end, but the pressure up front was a lot better. And so, yeah, no, you got to think that it gives this team confidence going into, the next 3-game stretch within a 4-week period is very opportunistic for this team, hosting TCU, going to Kansas, and then hosting Texas Tech. But yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see how they play moving forward, and obviously who's going to be the leader of that team going forward.